Okay, so with the version 3 that we're doing, we're going to do bias strips, finishing around the armhole. So we need to figure out how to do bias strips. Now, you feel free, you can buy the pre-made bias strips in the fabric store, but it's very easy to make your own as well. You just got to know where your bias is, right? So we know what the lengthwise grain is and crosswise grain is, right? Lengthwise goes down the length of the body and typically has very little stretch, and crosswise goes across the body and typically has more stretch because it has to stretch around our body, so our curves. And the bias is on the diagonal, okay? And that typically has the most stretch. And so here, let's see if I can do it. You can see that's the bias because I'm stretching it on the diagonal, okay? And so in order to make strips, all you're going to do is cut on that diagonal. So I have a grid, and I'm just placing the diagonal in that diagonal of the square, making sure that my piece of fabric is in a square as well, or just lined up. And so I'm just making sure you can see from here just to a square in the diagonal. And I'm going to try to cut with one hand along that diagonal, right? So I would say your typical is they have 1 inch strips, 2 inch strips. So let's just do 2 inch, just for sake of purposes. Here we're going to do 2 inch strip. Okay, so I'm lining it here. My ruler is 2 inches. So you just cut it like that. And that's your bias strip, okay? Now, let's see. Oh, sorry, here's the other one. So I'm just lining it along. I already cut, and then gonna cut this one. All right. So now we have 2 weird looking bias strips because I had very short pieces here. But let's go ahead and square it off, okay? So what I mean by squaring it off, to cut off these little peaks. So I'm just cutting it off so it'll be a square or right angles, because I want to next show you how to join strips. So here you can see that's like a tail, right? So I'm just going to cut it off right there. So I just line up my ruler like so, and cut. Cuts that part off, and then I'm going to go. Seems like this peak starts right here. So I'm just going to line it up. Oops. Line it up. And usually you'll have much longer strips, okay? I'm just working with my little strap here, strap pieces of I think it's 4 by something 9 that I have for my little scraps. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing for this one. So basically just cut off the tip. So you want it wherever, which one, because these were 2 inches, right? So you want to make sure that it's on the 2-inch mark. So we move that. So here, that'll be a full 2 inches. That one wouldn't be, obviously. You have all that left, so that's not a full 2 inches. This is the full 2 inches. So that's the little bit that we need to cut off. Okay. And the same thing on this side. You just want to make sure that you have a full 2 inches of whatever you are cutting. All right, and it'll be right there. Okay. So now these are cut on the bias, and these are my 2 strips. So say we need to join them, and we probably will for the armhole, and so we need to know how to do this. All right, so this is my right side, this is my right side. I don't know if I flip it over. Yes, you can't tell the difference. That's the wrong side, it's a little lighter. All right, so you remember, you can't join it like this, right? It's like we normally do. Right sides together, stitch down. You know, you open it up and you just have your seam allowance. You can even cut off some of that seam allowance to reduce the bulk. You very well can. Nothing wrong with doing it that way. But there is a better way when you're working with the bias. Okay, when you're working with the bias, meaning the most stretch, there is a better way. And all you're going to do is still with the right sides together, you're just going to make a 7. That's how I like to say it. Or if you want, you can say an L. However you want to say it. I always just say a 7. You're going to be making a 7. Oops, there you go. So it is right sides together. Oh, yeah, you know it's right sides together, people. It won't come up for me, but you know that's right sides together, okay? Now what you want to do is you're going to sew on the diagonal, because remember your bias is on the diagonal, right? That's how you can remember it. When you're joining, you want to join on the diagonal. So you'll be sewing on the diagonal. So from this tip here, okay, from here, so if I move it over, you can kind of see where the bottom one ends. And it's right here. It's probably still kind of hard to see. Okay, here we go. You see right there, ends right there. So you will be sewing from here, the top of it, to here, okay, to the bottom. And to make it easier, go ahead and just make a guideline, okay? So take your pen, marking tool, and just make a guideline. And roughly, it's in the diagonal, okay? And go ahead and sew that, and once you finish sewing that, then you're going to trim close to your stitch line, and you're going to remove most of that seam allowance, okay? So go ahead and do that and come back. Okay, as you can see, I sewed on that diagonal of my 7 or L, however you want to look at it, wherever you want to look at it, but like I said, I always do 7. Sewing on that diagonal, and now you want to trim close to the seam line. All right, so that's no longer, you don't need that anymore. Now when you open it up, course, you want to give it a good, nice press, but it's a nice I'm trying to hand press it for you real fast. As you can see, the top is even, bottom is even, less bulk here. Remember, you're gonna press that open is the best way to do that. And now you have one continuous bias strip that did not lose its bias, okay? Because we sewed on the bias. And that's how you cut on the bias, and that's how you join two strips of bias, strips of fabric together. Now, you can join any kind of fabric, but most definitely when you want to join pieces of bias fabric, that is the way you do it. All right. Everyone have a good day.